Fantastically Dumb Ideas. That should be the name of a podcast. Podcast about what exactly? I don't know. But I can just imagine a group of people pulling up fan theories for whatever franchise, insert favorite franchise here, scrolling through a bunch of fan theories and picking out some of the most insane, ridiculous, or just over the top ones. Like for Star Versus, one of my absolute favorites, or one of the most ridiculous ideas I ever heard about or came across, even now, is the idea Marco becomes Toffee. Toffee is Marco from the future. There's just something about it that just as the series has progressed, that one's pretty much been debunked because Toffee did. But when you think about it in some respects, it's kind of interesting. Kind of interesting to play with. Like, how would that happen? Is this some kind of weird mutation of the monster arm? What series or set of circumstances and events leads from Marco becoming human to transforming into a monster, becoming as merciless and just is what Toppy is? That'd actually be an interesting idea for a ridiculous fan fiction. Well, if a person were willing to dig into the dark psychological nitty gritty behind Top anyway, and what would happen for Marco to go through that kind of set of circumstances. I'm one of those people that if an idea is interesting, or a concept is interesting, even if I don't see it happening in canon, if someone goes ahead and writes a fan fiction or creates something around it, and they do a damn good job, yes, I want to look at it. I want to see their interpretation of things. Because, really, why should canon hold back or restrict what somebody does in a piece of fan work or fan art? If people were restricted to making things based on just canon, you wouldn't have crazy fun stuff like, going to use my buddy SR's works as a couple of examples here. His crack ship, Hekapoo from Star Versus with Lord Dominator, a lot of fun, ridiculous interactions there. Or an alternate universe where Star ends up with Jackie. Star and Jackie Lynn Thomas. If you look at the episode Just Friends, there's definitely some interesting chemistry or potential between those two characters. They bounce off of each other fantastically. Jackie's pretty calm and level-headed, and she's more than ready to go on adventures or whatever spontaneous thing Star has in mind. One of the biggest reasons I'm hoping Jackie comes back in the next season or a future season is to see more of how she bounce off Star. There's a lot of potential there. Yeah, this is going to be another ridiculous rambling session. If you hear any other noises in the background, that's the dog drinking water. He's good about drinking his water and stuff, trying to get him to actually eat his doggy food. That's been a challenge, but he's an old dog, like 17 years old. He's a husky, or no, not a husky. I don't know exactly what kind of dog he is. He's this medium-sized, incredibly fluffy white dog. His name's Cotton. Cotton with a K. Just to clarify some details here, within the past month or so, I moved in with my boyfriend, and Cotton is his dog. The other two dogs I mentioned every so often, Hawkeye and Gidget, those were the crazy pups that are living with my mom and dad. When I was still living at my parents' house. So that's a pretty major development in my life, I guess. I kind of moved out of my parents' basement, but not really going to go into too much detail on that since, yeah, peoples don't need to know about my personal life and what I do, and yeah. Of course, I'm having a brain fart right now. I think what. Okay, now I remembered why I wanted to start rambling about stuff in the first place. Ridiculous fan theories. Hmm. One of my buddies was discussing a doozy of a one with me, and I would love to see someone write a fan fiction about this because just okay. So somebody noticed that there were aesthetic similarities between Professor Venomous from OKKO and Jana and Tom from Star Versus. AU idea where Tom and Jana, Venomous is their kid. Let's play with that ridiculous idea for a second here. I'm one of those. Oh, the dog's looking at me. Do you need to go outside? You need to get out from under the table. Cotton, get out from under the table. Get out. Of course he's not going to listen to me. Okay. Ah, getting back to that particular idea. It's so absurd and kind of out there. Jana and Tom is already kind of a crack ship, kind of waiting in the wings, just wondering, are we going to see any significant interactions between those two particular characters? Honestly, I'm hoping for something fairly soon. That's one of the crack ships I'd like to see end up becoming canon, or think it kind of has a shot at it, but yeah, that's all major speculation. There's just interesting potential in those two interacting, considering Jana really gets a kick out of winding up Marco and just screwing with him. Imagine how much more she'd get out of Tom. There's been hints that Tom's trying to improve himself a little, or that there'd be some character development, but he's still in a place where he could get pretty easily rattled. And Jana, oh man, she would have a heyday trying to figure out how to get under Tom's skin and wind him up. But it's more the idea of how ornery and obnoxious those two are. The idea of them hanging out at rock shows, concerts, Jana teasing Tom for his interest in boy band music or something like that. Just, I think there's interesting potential there. I'd like to see it become canon. I won't be too heartbroken if it doesn't, though. It's kind of on a tentative fan wish list more than anything else. But just kind of describing that kind of dynamic. Imagine if they did get together, what would they be like as an adult married couple? Like, would Tom calm down a little bit? Or I imagine that Jana's going to be a wild child for the rest of her life. What character development she does go through, I think she's going to become a little bit more responsible and less reckless, like a little bit more mature in how she interacts with people, like keeping her antics reined in. So, Tom, I think he's going to be wrestling with anger problems for the rest of his life, so a domestic scene with these two, trying to think of who would be the more calm, composed partner. Well, considering this is all crack fan theory territory anyway, I'm tempted to say Jana would be the wild, fun parent, and then Tom would be the more disciplined one. Like, he's still got anger problems, but he's managed to get to the point where he keeps them a bit more under control. And just for the record, I intend for this discussion to be an entirely crack fan fiction, fan theory discussion. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going on the on this particular tangent, just setting the scene for what these two might be like as adults. And then okay, so you have that. And then their kid enters the picture, and that's Professor Venomous. I was trying to draw up a picture of how would you get somebody that kind of calm, stoic, kind of doesn't really express himself all that much, but has a soft, gooey side. Get somebody like that from a pair like Tom and Jana. That's why I was spending so much time expanding on that. Looking at this from the perspective of how would I set this up as a batshit crazy fanfic author? Okay, so you got that. And that's really as far as that one would go. The part where Professor Venomous ends up as a villain in OKKO and all the antics there. I was discussing this a bit too. It's hinted that OKKO takes place in 2010, so 21X. Venomous has a time machine hidden away somewhere. He's got a time machine hidden somewhere in his Great Big Lair. That's really as far as I could go with that particular premise or setup. I just thought it'd be fun to dream up how would you set up these circumstances as a fan fiction author. So the biggest thing there would be figuring out what kind of dynamic Tom and Jana would have, what traits Venomous would take from either parent, or what it'd be like to have them as parents. That'd probably be the core and the most fun of writing something like that. Figuring out how their interactions would be, or how having those two as parents would shape Venomous into what kind of character he is. If someone were going to write that particular fan fiction, I'd be tempted to tell them to hold off to wait and see if there's a little bit more revealed about Venomous as a character, or what's going on with mysterious shadowy figure, because then you have even more fun soap opera shenanigans and stuff to bring in. Just imagine if the evil twin theory holds through with the laser blast or whatever else. Tom and Jana as KO's grandparents. When it comes to the idea of writing any kind of OKKO fan fiction, where you're playing with who KO's dad was, or the evil twin thing, I just keep coming right back to the soap opera melodrama and reactions. It just seems so funny to me. Like, if you were going to tackle that at all, or even bring out the evil twin reveal, just have an entire episode poking fun or parodying soap opera tropes. I don't know, I'm just glued to that particular idea. May even play with it myself. Okay, I'll get off of the cracktastic fan fiction discussion. I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun to I just thought it'd be fun to have that particular discussion. Maybe it'd be even more fun if I make this the discussion for a headcanon hive, like have this god-awful round-robin fan fiction session, and we all come up with the worst possible ideas and just make it worse and worse. And yeah, I'm going to petition that, see what everybody else says, so don't be surprised if that becomes a thing. I'll bet I can get at least one person on board with me for this. Just fun fact, I remember one time after recording an episode of Talking Rainbows, Talking Puppies, just bullshitting with Eric and Bacon. We did this impromptu kind of round robin star versus fan fiction, where we just kept coming up with the most bizarre or weirdest thing that could happen next. And just, man, I am so bummed that we didn't end up doing a round robin fan fiction episode. I have been so bummed about that for the longest time. I can't. I want to bring it up again. I want to see if I can get him on board, because Man, that'd just be freaking hilarious. It'd be freaking fun, but can't promise anything there. That's not my podcast. Headcan and Hive? Hell yeah. I'm gonna make that happen because it's my podcast, but we'll see. Ah, I have been writing fan fiction, but not Tom and Janice stuff. I actually haven't written anything Star Versus related. It's all been OKKO crap, and as you can probably guess, bluff. Fan fiction bluff. I'm one of those people writing and then they kissed stories about Red Action and Enid, and then my most recent venture, Boxman and Venomous. That one was coming a mile away. I have a shipping corner for Venomous and Boxman. Started writing fan fiction. Of course I'm gonna write about that. Fluff is just cutesy romantic interactions between characters. Like if there's a drawing of two characters kissing or holding hands or something like that, like baseline dating romance stuff, that's fluff. Or at least that's my definition or description of it. When it comes to discussing what crap fans do or fan content and stuff, there seems to be an umbrella of terms and it seems to be subjective between different persons. Like the term Mary Sue. The definition for that varies pretty dramatically. I'm not going to get into a discussion about what it means or what it is, just throwing that out there as an example. Trumpex enchilada. No, Will, not going there. Oh my god. Crack ships need drama and drug use and cutting with bad emo music and the parents not understanding the child. Will, what you're describing there isn't necessarily constrained to crack ships. There's some pretty bad fan fiction and fan content across the board about any kind of ship, even canonical ones. I'll bet if I looked hard enough, I could probably find a Starco fan fiction with every single one of those elements. Marco and Star acting completely out of character, Marco switching from love sentence to some kind of hardcore heavy metal rap music or something dumb like that, and some kind that's floating around out there. I wouldn't doubt it. Some emo kid or edgelord going, I need a way to vent and express my pain, and then I like Star Versus and I'm gonna write this and just feel my pain, internet! Just for the record, if someone's writing fan fiction like that, though, I'm an advocate for just let the person write it. I'm not one of those don't like it, don't read it people. You actually have to read it or start reading it to get an impression or of whether or not you're going to continue. But if you get as far as a couple of sentences in and you're not hooked or it's just not clicking, that's when you stop reading and move on. Zork X Raider. Oh, you guys are gonna keep pushing that whole Zork thing, aren't you? That phallic Yu-Gi-Oh monster. Just damn it, man. I regret the day that I entertained bringing up that screenshot in that podcast a while back. I regret that. I really do. Never gonna live it down. God. Yep. It started. Just gonna be nonstop references to the frickin' phallic Yu-Gi-Oh monster. Yeah, great. Whatever. trying to think of one of the worst fan fictions I've ever read. Most people immediately point to My Immortal, but that's pretty much a dead horse by this point. And there's the fact that the author came out and wrote a biography about it. It's interesting, but interesting more in the fact that it's pretty much that's pretty much fandom history right there. It's one of those well-known things. Everybody knows it exists, and they know the context and subject for it now. I think that was, I don't know. That's a different kind of discussion entirely. Might have to make a video about that someday, discussing how much of a mystery and enigma it was to the internet at whole. When I was in college, there was a group of people that like to get together sometimes to read bad poetry and share bad fan fiction. I only got to join one of those sessions once, unfortunately, but man, did they love My Immortal. Man, did they love it. Okay. One of the worst fanfics I've ever read. This is probably pretty tame compared to some of the crap other people have dug into. I know there's stuff like that out there, but somebody wrote a fan fiction, or an Ed, Edd n Eddy fan fiction, where their OC, my original character, got together with Eddie. No, I did not write this. Somebody else wrote this, but I don't know what it was. I should have stopped reading after the first couple of sentences in. I mean, the person themselves, they were a decent writer. As in, they had a good grasp on grammar and basic sentence structure and plot and stuff like that. What made this stand out and go places it really shouldn't have was that this person's character and Eddie had intercourse. It was a fan fiction about about an OC and Eddie. Just, these are 13-year-old kids. Just no. Just ugh. It was so, what the hell am I reading? I did do a dramatic reading of this one for this bad fan fiction group. Considering My Immortal was a pinnacle of what they considered bad fan fiction, man, were they in for an unpleasant surprise when I read through it. I did a dramatic reading of a bad Ed, Edd n Eddy fan fiction. That's one of the worst ones I've come across, so thinking about it, the absolute worst or the pinnacle of it, I still consider Differ Goes to Taco Bell the worst one I've ever actually listened to someone read or made a point of looking up. That was the pinnacle. That one tops everything else. It's one of those, granted, it's one of those classic, everybody knows it exists, they know how terrible it is, they know what heights it reaches kind of fan fictions, but that's the only one that I actually got past the first couple of sentences for. Some of the other more notorious ones, like Cupcakes or Sweet Apple Massacre for My Little Pony, couldn't get through those. Tried to read into them or listen to somebody read through them. Those got graphic within the first couple of paragraphs. I'll give the guy behind him credit. Fantastic writer. I would definitely pick up a horror novel if they wrote it, because they definitely know how to write very graphic visuals and scenes to the point where you're imagining it as it goes on. But yeah. I swear, half the attraction for some of these people for writing stuff, if they're deliberately going out of their way to write these horrific things, is the fact that this would never take place on the show. Just the novelty of, let's completely distort or screw up a show intended for just, yeah. In context for what My Immortal is, go ahead and look it up on Google. I'm going to give you a very condensed general description. It's the most infamous bad fan fiction of all time. It's a Harry Potter fan fiction. Bad grammar, very little story structure or plot, about this goth gal that hates preps, ends up dating Draco Malfoy. Everyone becomes a goth with some kind of permutation of vampire. Why it caught the attention of so many different people is that they weren't sure if this was your classic 13-year-old that didn't really have a grasp on writing basics or how to develop characters like one of those classic bad fan fictions, or if it had been written on purpose. There were so many hallmarks that the author was self-aware to some degree that this couldn't be someone. It straddled Poe's law. It was a Poe's law kind of thing. Is this legitimate, or was it made this way on purpose? It was. This particular fanfiction was named after that Evanescence song. The person who wrote it went for every hallmark or reference they could to make it sound like the epitome of early 2000s goth and emo. All the references there. If you were a high schooler back in 2007 or 2005, 2006, 2007 like I was, you know all the references that pop up in there. Those were classic hallmarks of early 2000s emo scene. I've been half tempted to get the book written by the author of My Immortal. They came out and pretty much laid out where they were coming from when they wrote the thing in the first place. So, yeah, the person that wrote it knew exactly what they were doing. They did it as a joke, or it was a coping mechanism of sorts. It was written that way on purpose. So the mystery around it, that's gone. But it's still interesting from that perspective. Man, I waste so much freaking time on the internet. The fact that I know this. Just, what am I doing? The only thing I can say, even though I spend a lot of time on the internet, though, I can never keep up with what the latest memes are. I know a couple of them, but that's just about it. Every time there's some I'll say this much. I've been spending way too much time on the internet, considering the fact that I know what the Zootopia meme is and elf practice. I'll just say this much right now. I'm not digging into either of them. I've already discussed some kind of topics that I probably shouldn't have. Whatever. It pops up again. Actually, no, when it comes to the Zootopia thing, if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can just go down that proverbial rabbit hole yourself. Yeah. You can go look that up on Google and have fun figuring out what that is if you don't have any idea what it is. Because I'm not explaining it. This is something that's better experience for yourself as to how ridiculous and horrifying it is all wrapped into the same package. Just oh, if it were a lot warmer outside in springtime weather. Oh, who am I kidding? I still wouldn't go outside. I need to, though. I remember looking up a place called Mammoth Caves down in Tennessee. I originally planned on going there last year on my 24th birthday. It's been over a year now. I'm still talking about going. Still haven't freaking made plans to go. It's one of the more easily accessible places I can think of. That's this cool, let's go check it out. It'd be like maybe a 2-3 day trip if I planned it out right. It's not that far away. It's the experience of a lifetime. One of those things, just, I want to go check out this cool thing. But I haven't done it yet. just that's one of the few things I can think of that that's one of the few times I actually want to go outside. Otherwise, yeah, I'm content just sitting and piddling away on the computer or whatever else. I really don't do a hell of a lot. I really don't. Cartoon critic. I'm not. You'll find the Zootopia meme. It'll come up. It'll come up if you narrow the search to within the past month. You'll see it. You'll know it when it's looking you right square in the face. You'll know it, and you will absolutely regret looking it up. You'll regret it. But you'll also find a cornucopia of ridiculous crap that wouldn't be as funny without that horrible context. Give me a second, I'm gonna go get a glass of water. Cotton, where'd you go? Cotton. Cotton, get off the bed. Cotton. Come here. Cotton. Cotton, get off the bed. Get off the bed. No, you're not supposed to sit there. You're not supposed to be on the bed. Look at this nice new rug. You can lay on the rug. Lay on the rug. Darn dog. Cotton keeps laying on the bed. My boyfriend doesn't want him to do that, so. Cotton from King of the Hill. Quite a spitfire. He was definitely something. Okay. Okay, I just looked at some of the stuff you sent me on Skype, Will. I have heard of Empress Teresa. I've watched that fellow's particular video. Actually, down the rabbit hole, that guy's YouTube series. Highly recommend it. Pretty interesting stuff. When he brings up a topic or goes into it, he goes in depth and discusses the background of it, gives his thoughts and opinions on it. Just for some context here, Empress Teresa is some... There was a fella that decided, I'm going to write and self-publish my own book. And he considers this book his magnum opus. It's supposedly about this teenage gal that gets omnipotent powers. It's about how she reigns in and uses said omnipotent powers. Sounds like it could be a pretty interesting premise, right? Well, this guy manages to butcher it because he's such a bad writer. He's horribly bad. And then the cover for his book, the cover says it all. Didn't go out of his way to at least hire somebody to slap together one of those classic generic hot people looking at each other or attractive girl with the Photoshop gradient thrown over the top. Didn't even go that far. No, hand drew this cover. It's pretty bad. You start there. And then if you actually try to read the work, I'm not quite sure how to describe this guy's writing or where to really start. It doesn't really have any sense of logic to it. Or I guess the best way to describe it is it's a first draft without all the cleaning up, editing to get it to the point it should be, or to refine it to the point it should be. I think the guy was trying to go for some kind of stream of consciousness thought process thing. Something where it sounds like somebody's recording their thoughts and putting them in a journal or diary or something like that. But if someone's going to take that kind of approach with writing and stuff, the thing is, it can't be entirely stream of consciousness or just somebody recording every little thought that come into their head. There's still some writing conventions you'd have to keep there to keep the reader, reading, to keep them following the plot. There has to be some kind of logical story progression. I've come across a couple of books that have done some interesting out-of-the-box stuff. Like, I remember one where the entire story was pretty much conveyed through blog posts or texts and chats between people. Even then, while there's some emphasis on trying to make the dialogue organic, the bits that were blog posts, those still played out or were set up in such a way that there was logical story progression to it. There was still some passage of time, and things moved forward in such a way that the story kept going. I don't think I'm doing a very good job of describing this. Yeah, I guess to get to the crux of the point I was trying to make here, even if you're writing from the perspective, or even if you have somebody writing from the point of, I'm going to write or keep a journal about things, it's not set up exactly the same way a real person would keep or write a diary or journal. Because you still have to follow some conventions. Things still have to be linear to some extent. It's just one of the parts and pieces of story writing as a medium. That's just my take on it. Somebody could prove me completely wrong here. Gonna keep an eye out and see if I can find something that would follow the format of somebody keeping a journal or diary and actually felt more realistic, but still felt fairly engaging in regards to telling a story that keeps someone reading. In regards to one of the questions that popped up here, I have heard of Mr. Enter. Yes. That's actually the reviewer that inspired me to get started back in 2014 when I was still actively making content and stuff. Not going to go too much further with that particular discussion, though, because, yeah, let's just say that I'm not really much of an Enter fan anymore, and don't really need to go any further than that. Oh my god! I'm not apologizing. I'm not. When I bring up or reference something and put it out there as it's your own fault if you look it up. I will say this much, though. I fall prey to morbid curiosity all the time. That's the only reason why I know some things exist, or can say I have a frame of reference for things like the animated Titanic sequel, Tentacolino, or ridiculous cartoons like the Fonz and the Happy Days gang. I will go out of my way to watch some of this stuff just out of morbid curiosity, and the minute I pull it up, man, do I regret it. I don't think it's a bragging right to say that over the course of 3 or 4 days, I forced myself to sit through the animated Titanic sequel. The one with the octopus, and the story's so convoluted, you'd feel like you were on drugs watching it. There's no way to describe what they were thinking, or how this thing came to be, or what they think Just, I actually sat down and made myself power through it. Like, I'd watch 10, 20 minutes one day, couldn't get myself to watch anymore. The next day, I'd sit down and be like, I am going to get through this crappy movie. I managed to get through it, but it took 3-4 days to do so. It took that long. Have not done that since. I also tried queuing up and watching the Bonds and the Happy Days gang one time. Somebody actually went out of their way to upload digital or upload files of it. Otherwise, you don't really have access to it. The only way to find the series is on the internet, or if you have some kind of VHS tape with the episodes on it. Queued up an episode of it, and man, it was awful. It was awful in the respect of the pacing was just really slow. Horribly, horribly slow. A lot of older cartoons have older pacing, but there's a world of difference between something campy, over the top, and fun, like Hanna-Barbera's Scooby-Doo, and a mess like the Fonz and the Happy Days gang. The minute you queue up something like that, you can smell the lame attempt at a cash grab on it. Just this horrible attempt to try and cash in on the popularity of the Fonz. There's some shows that can ride on the coattails of popular celebrities or use their name to get a series out there or pull people in to watch it. But the more successful productions have some kind of heart and intrigue to them. There's more to them than just, hey, look, the celebrity's here. There's actually some kind of ridiculous gimmick or setup to it. Like, like I'm thinking of a specific Adult Swim cartoon. Oh yeah, Mike Tyson's Mysteries. That one. The big pull is, hey, this is a series about Mike Tyson. But when you queue it up, there's so much more to it. It's ridiculous. It's crude. It entertains pretty dark humor. It's set up in such a way that it's got a distinctive, unique personality. It's not just about Mike Tyson. I am very dumb. like right now. I plan on staying up. I plan on staying up until 2 in the morning. And I have a work call at 8 o'clock. I have a work call at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm going to stay up until 2 because I'm stupid. In regards to the newer Scooby-Doo, I have been meaning to watch through that. I've been meaning to watch through that series because from the couple of episodes I've seen, probably the best Scooby-Doo series I've seen, hands down. Jackie Chan Adventures is another example of bringing in a celebrity or turning him into a cartoon character, but the series isn't just, hey, look, Jackie Chan's here. It's a pretty weird kind of out there series. You could take Jackie Chan out of it and still have a fun, interesting show about magical powered talismans and trying to stop bad guys from grabbing them. But Jackie Chan just adds a little bit more to it. If you're going to pull in a celebrity and add him as a character to a show, that's definitely an example of how to do it. I need to go back and watch that one too. I actually consider Jackie Chan one of my nostalgic favorites next to, or you know how some people say that certain blocks, channels, or whatever else were their quote-unquote childhood. That was my Saturday morning and all that stuff. Mine was Kids WB. I'm one of those weirdos that's actually a little nostalgic for coconut bread. It's a so-so kind of mediocre show, but kind of, it has weird nostalgic value to me. Looking at some of the comments in the comments section here, jeez. It's kind of sad that if someone just references chloroform in a joke or just it up, first thing I thought of was Dan from Dan Versus, and how casually he whips that out and uses it, or just some. Jeez. Man, if there's any cartoon, okay, going to go off on a completely different tangent now. Cartoons that I think were canceled way too soon, or deserved more airtime or another season or whatever else. Going to start with the obvious one. Wander Over Yonder should have gotten a season 3 because all the cast and crew had ideas for season 3. They wanted to keep going. Probably would have been even stronger than season 2 or had that same potential there. They had another bigger bad than Dominator in the wings. And there were hints that this supposed big bad, or this ambiguous big bad, had some kind of connection to Lord Hater. There's even fan theories floating around about Hater's past life as a monkey on Earth, or monkeys in outer space, and all that stuff. I should dig up some of those and put links to them at some point, like dredge that up again. Very interesting conversation. The idea that the skeletal galactic overlord was once a monkey astronaut. There's Wander, another show I think got canceled way too soon, or more accurately, wasn't given a fair hand when it was airing on TV. Dave Presler's Robot and Monster. I remember the first time I saw a description for this particular show. Somebody described it as a spiritual predecessor. Or, yeah, spiritual predecessor to Invader Zim. They were right. Watched through some of the episodes myself. It's not a one-for-one, but some of the humor. Zim really likes to double down on the satire and use weird, abstract, surreal humor. The big thing about Robot and Monster, they like to bring in dark humor. Their favorite humor device was irony. There is a little bit of satire in the interactions between titular character Robot, voiced by the same fellow who voices Dan from Dan Versus. Fun fact there. And the fact that his brother Gart was this kind of pompous, narcissistic. They had sibling favoritism going on there. Robot comes from a rich bureaucratic family, but he's a black sheep. His family likes to be stuffy and formal, and they worry about appearances and stuff. There's a couple of episodes that play with that and how much trouble Robot has getting along with them or sympathizing with them. Robot's one of those tragic characters. You know how there's always that character that's the butt of the joke or has a lot of the or is the target of a lot of physical humor. You know, the kind of character I'm talking about. He was that kind of character. But the biggest draw for Robot and Monster is the ironic humor. That show did fantastic with setups and jokes and stuff. Favorite episode is their Halloween special. It is an homage to Little Shop of Horrors, my favorite musical. My favorite musical ever. And the last show that I want to bring up got canceled way too soon, Dan Versus. The show that got me started on this rambling tangent in the first place. Man, it was weird enough that Dan Versus got picked up by The Hub, a channel that was billing itself as family friendly. Their flagship is freaking Technicolor ponies. For or as quote-unquote innovative or character-driving that Friendship is Magic was, being one of those forerunners for there can be more to a show than just pushing toys or whatever else. There was still an element of being family-friendly and appealing to general audiences to it. Dan Versus was it came out of the blue in regards to humor, overall tone, and execution. Some of the questionable things Dan does. I go so far as to say I honestly think Dan Versus is an adult cartoon. It's just way more toned down from what people are used to. When someone thinks adult cartoon, they immediately think of something like Rick and Morty, The Simpsons, Family Guy. Most adult cartoons, they go straight for the vulgar humor. People use, or every character uses cuss words, graphic imagery, that kind of thing, just pushing the envelope. I will say this much though: The Simpsons does not entertain that. What makes The Simpsons an adult cartoon is the fact that it tackles or deals with mature subject matter and themes. So The Simpsons kind of off to the side there. But Dan Versus some of the graphic stuff or things that they have Dan do, it's there's enough there that the viewer can get what's going on, but they don't go full hog, if you know what I mean. Nobody cusses. Just I'd actually go so far as to say that I'd like more adult cartoons written like Dan Versus was. Actually, to be fair, Bob's Burgers is the flavor of mature, light-hearted adult cartoon that The Simpsons was back in the 90s. I'd honestly say that Bob's Burgers is probably my favorite adult cartoon on the air right now, just because of that, just because of that more laid-back tone and the fact that it doesn't have to resort or doesn't really go out of its way to resort to graphic imagery and vulgarity and stuff. Just for the record, though, I don't hate those other shows. Family Guy, kind of 50-50. Rick and Morty, absolutely love it. I'd say it's the one of the few adult cartoons I can think of, or cartoons in general, that has really graphic, gory imagery or plays with controversial subject matter and does so in a fairly clever way. I'd say the same about BoJack Horseman to some degree, that these shows know how to handle it and set things up in the respect it needs to. Actually, I'm going to add one more in there, Netflix's F for Family. All of those do work with vulgar humor and do so well. They execute it in the kind of way it needs to. Hmm. Ah, American Dad. Okay, since that popped up, I'm kind of mixed on that one. For a while, it seemed like a lot of Seth MacFarlane's better writing was in American Dad, and some of the episodes were stronger because MacFarlane was actually involved on the production, and it was some of the stronger execution of his reference humor and character writing and stuff like that. But as it continues, it's reached some of the same lows that Family Guy has. There's some episodes that rival Family Guy in how absolutely grotesque and horrific they are. Just shock humor for the sake of being shocking and disgusting. American Dad versus Family Guy, though, I will say this much: I still prefer American Dad. Don't want to go to, or actually, speaking of Seth MacFarlane and some of his works and stuff, this is probably going to come completely out of nowhere on my part, but I'd say Orville, Seth MacFarlane's parody of Star Trek, is the best show he's ever made. Hands down, in my opinion, anyway. Orville, best Seth MacFarlane show. Just It's so weird. I have such mixed feelings on some of McFarlane's work as a whole. Like, the guy's clever. He knows how to use reference humor. He's a decent writer. But I've always been kind of mixed on Family Guy, American Dad, stuff like that. Like, there's some episodes I really like, others not so much. McFarlane stuff is known as this lowbrow humor kind of thing. Then 2010s roll around, I start dating someone that's an avid Trekkie, watch through a couple of Star Trek series, like I've watched all the way through Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Voyager is my absolute favorite out of the Star Trek series I've seen. And I am so on board with old school Star Trek stuff. I love that the effects are used just to get across the point of, hey, we're out in space, we're going on fantastical adventures, but the focus and core is on the writing. Like, using science fiction as a means to explore philosophical or moral conundrums and ideas. More focus on the characters themselves and character writing. And then new Star Trek comes out. I am incredibly excited about checking out Discovery, on board for the first couple of episodes. But man, just wrapped it up after that. Just wrapped it up after that because it reeks of the J.J. Abrams stuff. It feels like more flash, not much substance, for lack of a better description. Now, just for the record, I am going to try and give the series another chance a bit later on because I like the protagonist. I'm curious to see what they do with her or what direction they take. But after being disappointed by that, Seth MacFarlane series comes out. I hear a couple different people, my boyfriend's dad, the original Trekkie that got him involved on it, or the original Star Trek fan that drew him into things, saying Orville is a new old school Star Trek, or it has that same kind of vibe and feel to it. It was surprising, incredibly surprising. Start watching it myself, and yeah, the cinematography and choices that they go for, the way they set up some plots, it has more of an homage or theme and feel to it that's akin to the old school Star Trek than what the new Star Trek does. I'm eagerly awaiting more. I love Seth MacFarlane's new series. It's kind of ridiculous to think that Seth MacFarlane, his show, The Orville, is considered by some Star Trek fans to be what's carrying on the spirit of Gene Roddenberry in a new science fiction series, or a new series that kind of draws inspiration from Star Trek. It's interesting to think about. Of the characters in Orville, my favorite is Isaac. Isaac, hands down. Just, as soon as you've seen Next Generation and Data, he's one of the best Star Trek characters out there. Just one of the more clever and fun takes on a sentient robot. Isaac he's kind of in the same, or he's not exactly the same kind of character. Data just set up the precedent. I like sentient robots that are trying to come to terms with being a robot or exploring humanity or something like that. That kind of character. Set it up as, I like this kind of character. I want to see more of it. I'm sorry about that noise in the background. I think the heater's acting up or something. It does that every so often. Like, you could have several hours of silence and then... Over dramatic interpretation of that, but I mean, I'm in a kind of ornery, obnoxious mood right now, so... Blah. Sorry for that ridiculous tangent. I have been dying to just geek out a little about Star Trek in some way, shape, or form. I don't really want to get too into the nitty gritty or details of things. I'd rather keep extended discussion of like what I think of this character and their character writing to, well, Skype discussions or behind the scenes kind of thing, since I would not feel confident enough to try and tackle analyzing or discussing Star Trek characters. Oh my god. I think it takes a couple of minutes for comments to catch up because I just. Jeez. Now it stops. Now it calms down. Ugh. I have heard of Panty and Stocking with Garterville. It's an anime. The general gist I get of it is that it's an anime parodying American cartoons or kind of drawing inspiration from them and poking fun at it. I haven't actually watched it. I plan on watching it eventually, but I don't know. It's just not something that I'm gonna go out of my way to watch, or I'm not interested in doing so anyway. Watch it eventually, just. I don't know. Have been looking for something else to watch. I guess I'll go ahead and cue that up. Latest thing I've been watching through the live action Daredevil series. Got through season 1. That was a hell of a ride. Halfway through season 2. I'm taking a break from it for a while since, well, I'll say this much. The writing for Elektra in that series, probably some of the best writing I've seen for an anti-hero character. Just, she's a very well-written character, and the actress portraying her does a fantastic job. It's one of those cases of, ugh, this character pisses me off. Every time they appear on screen, I don't want to see any more of them. Just no. So I'm taking a break from it for a while. Drawn Together. I've heard of that. Don't really have much interest in checking it out. I don't know. I'm just not that interested. Raunchy adult show about cartoon characters from several different genres of stuff getting together and doing stuff. I've heard good things about it. Just have to be in a certain mood to watch that. Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. Have to be in a certain mood to watch a cartoon like that. The horrible truth is I'm probably not going to be. There's a lot of stuff I need to watch through. Started watching Bang Bone a while back. That's a cartoon that a lot of people compare to Star Versus or say, watch this, it's kind of like Star Versus. Watched a couple of episodes. It's not bad. Haven't really gotten back to watching through the rest of it yet, though. Is there actually an argument about? Are you guys actually arguing about whether or not, or whether Panty and Stocking or Drawn Together is a better show? I don't really think that's a fair compare and contrast or argument. It's like an apples to oranges kind of comparison or thing. And I guess that kind of discussion or argument, it really boils down to what someone's favorite kind of medium is or what they expect from a comedy or what they're looking to watch. I've heard of Diabolic Lovers. I have no idea what the hell it is. I I have no idea. I've just heard the title. I don't know what it is. Hmm. Oh, okay. Was inspired by the other. Okay, I can see some point for compare and contrast then. Ah, man, I'm starting to run out of steam here. Don't really have much else to talk about or ramble about or whatever else. Okay, I've oh god. Oh god. It's an anime about okay. I feel like a horrible person for this, but my brother told me about some audiobook or something he plans on auditioning or trying out for a bit earlier today. Apparently, some independent writer decided to write a generic werewolf and vampire supernatural story taking place in a town around where I live. Like a real town, even going so far as to reference certain events and stuff that happens in it. I I don't know. Whenever I hear whenever I hear of a story that involves vampires and werewolves anymore, it's been tarnished by Twilight. It's been tarnished by sparkly vampires that glow when they walk out into sunlight. It's hard for me to think about it without thinking about Edward Cullen and going out of my way to see the live action movie in theaters. So I went to go see Twilight in theaters and I sat there like a complete jackass laughing at every corny or ridiculous thing that came up on screen. Just thinking, this horribly written book, how are they going to translate this to a live action production? It is the greatest comedy of all time. That's the entertainment value for watching something like that. But just vampires. I can't do it. I just can't. I've seen one episode of crap, what is that series? There's one anime series where they have a badass vampire. That's the one piece of media I can think of where I give it a chance and know that they do something interesting with it. Interesting as in this is badass, this is what a vampire should be. But that's it. Anything else, especially by a newer writer, and then you slap the genre supernatural romance on it. No, no, I just can't. I just can't. Ah, damn it, Robot, of course you bring that up. Okay, I need to make another exception here. When somebody does kind of a campier, fun incarnation of movie monsters like the Adam Sandler Hotel Transylvania, or no, a better way to describe that is Genndy Tartakovsky's, or DreamWorks, or no. I don't remember the name of the studio that produced that, but Hotel Transylvania. I like the vampire in that. Best role Adam Sandler has had in years. I mean it. I mean that. That vampire, I like that, and I also like Enid's parents from OKKO. I'm kind of hoping that if OKKO goes on for a while, they have another Halloween episode and they introduce the rest of Enid's family, and it's just this gallery of classic horror movie monsters. I would just love that. I would love that so much. a buddy. SR likes to draw comics with Red Action and Enid. He's already drawn one where Enid goes to pick up her younger siblings. Don't remember their names off the top of my head. Darn it. And he sets it up to where Enid's picking him up. Red happens to come onto the scene, and as she's walking away with them, they look over at Red, and they have this kind of look like, we're watching you. don't you, you're not gonna hurt our older sister, or something like that. I'm kind of hoping that I can convince him to entertain the idea of what would it be like if Red met the rest of Enid's family. Like, she gets invited to a Thanksgiving dinner or a family reunion or something. I am just so attached to the ridiculous idea of of Enid introducing her significant other to this gallery of horror movie monsters, like starting with their parents, the vampire and the werewolf, and then you have you have a mummy, inexplicably some kind of ooze. Maybe that's the adoptive uncle. Just every classic horror movie monster you can think of. That's who's sitting around this great big table. And I'm just man, if by some twisted set of circumstances or miracle I got hired on to work on that show, I would push for a Thanksgiving special with Enid's family. I would push for an episode about that. But that's an alternate reunion or an alternate reality or something that's never going to happen. And God, not going to get into that. But man, every other day I wake up kind of upset that I'm not working in the animation industry and I'm stuck in retail for the rest of my life. And just actually getting back to that, it would be pretty. That's another idea for a fan fiction. Steven Universe OKKO crossover. I don't know how you pull that off, but yes. Enid becomes friends with Sadie, and then Sadie has a Sadie killer performance over at Enid's house. I'll have to add that to my list of ridiculous fan fiction topics to write about. Looking at some of the comments there, The Munsters is an older sitcom about a classic, or about a family, or a sitcom about a family of horror movie monsters. Like, Frankenstein was, I don't darn it, I don't know the details. I just know that it exists and it's a sitcom. I need to sit down and watch this. I remember my mom queuing it up one time and saying that it was one of her favorite programs. Kind of interesting to think about. Halloween is my absolute favorite holiday. A lot of that has to do with my dad. He'd go all out with decorations and stuff on Halloween. That might have been contributed somewhat by my mom too. I don't know. I can imagine that she might kind of like the holiday because she likes to show the monsters. I don't know. The fact that she likes them, then again, she likes Twilight Zone too. I'll have to ask about that. Okay, yeah, been rambling about nothing for an hour now. So going to cut this off here. Good night, everybody. Shooting for Head Kid and Hive on Saturday at 6 o'clock, I think. Just keep a look at the schedule if you actually give a flying crap about my podcast. It'll be up there. Good night, everybody.